Technically, the king was Thutmose III, and although still called so, it was a title only. Hatshepsut evidently felt she had as much right to rule Egypt as any male. She was a volcano of thought, a seer whose name reverberated in stone centuries after her own had nearly been lost to the ages. For centuries, her statues and temples were silent, until scientists discovered the long-lost mummy of Queen Hatshepsut. And what they discovered beneath her wrappings completely revised everything we believed about Egypt's golden age. Buried within her ancient DNA were secrets not only confirming her identity, but shocking clues regarding her life, her health, and the enigmatic cause of death. The findings shook the globe of archaeology to its foundations. Hatshepsut had long been remembered as the woman pharaoh who broke tradition to reign supreme over Egypt, but her own DNA revealed a deeper, more sinister story. A story of ambition, genius, and tragic irony lost under the sands of Luxor. Before Cleopatra's legend was created, a different woman had risen to lead the greatest civilization on the planet. Born about 1507 BC, Hatshepsut was predestined for greatness. Daughter of Pharaoh Thutmose I and his principal wife, Ahmose, Hatshepsut came not only with royal blood, but with a clear mind and a confidence that would later shake the very foundations of Egypt's monarchy to its core. Trained in theology, administration, and diplomacy, she gained the tacit admiration of the priests of Ammonius, who muttered that the gods themselves smiled upon her. And maybe she half believed it too. When her father died, Hatshepsut wedded her half-brother, Thutmose II, a political marriage designed to maintain the royal lineage. Theirs was a marriage of obligation, not affection, and issued only a daughter, Neferur, the male heir to the throne. Thutmose III was born to a secondary wife. When Thutmose II unexpectedly died, Egypt was unsettled. The young boy was not yet old enough to rule, so Hatshepsut intervened, not yet queen, but regent and guardian of the crown. Initially, her reign was meant to be temporary, a gesture of devotion to her deceased husband and his son. However, as time went by, her power strengthened. Backed by priests and wise counselors, her name started appearing alongside the young king's. She sported regal finery, issued edicts, and carried out the sacred rituals of Pharaoh. And then, in a move that shocked the ancient world, Hatshepsut declared herself Pharaoh, the living god of divine power on this planet. To legitimize her reign, she wove a myth of celestial destiny. In temple reliefs, she proclaimed that Ammonius, the chief deity, had appeared to her in the form of her father to sire her, and thus was she born divine. This story of sacred parentage legitimized what could have been rebellion into divine right. To rule Egypt is not my ambition, she announced. It is my birthright. From that point on, she ruled as Pharaoh Hatshepsut, His Majesty, she was called. She wore the male trappings of kingship, the Nemes headband, the royal kilt, and even the false beard, not to conceal her femininity, but to signify that the essence of a ruler was above it. Hatshepsut's reign was a period of stability and prosperity. Instead of emphasizing conquest, she emphasized trade, peace, and monumental building. Egypt prospered. She reopened trade routes, revitalized the economy, and ordered stunning buildings that continue to awe us to this day. Her masterwork, the mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari outside Luxor, emerged from the cliffs in elegant tiers that seemed to span the human and the divine. Its reliefs made her life eternal, her divine conception, coronation, travels, and beliefs. It was not merely a temple. It was her life in stone. One of her most renowned achievements was a journey to the land of Punt, a faraway kingdom full of incense, ivory, and gold. Her vessel sailed back loaded with booty and living myrrh trees, which she installed in her temple courtyard, a living reminder of renewal and rebirth. For more than 2 decades, her reign brought peace, prosperity, and an artistic revival. With her at the helm, Karnak's temples prospered, agriculture boomed, and Egypt was at the peak of its cultural heights. She was not just a queen on the side of the throne. She was the throne. But history tends to be unforgiving toward those who challenge its customs. Upon her death, Thutmose III, now an adult, attempted to blot her out of memory. Her statues were smashed, her name erased from inscriptions, her portraits disfigured. Egypt forgot its female pharaoh for centuries. Her tomb was forgotten, her body lost. It was as if the gods had wiped her out by divine fiat. The enigma of Hatshepsut's vanishing remained until the early 1900s, when British archaeologist Howard Carter, years before unearthing Tutankhamun, discovered a humble tomb in the Valley of the Kings, KV-60. Within were two mummies, one which was named as Sitarin, Hatshepsut's nurse, and a second unmarked, carelessly dumped on the ground. Carter recorded the discovery, sealed the tomb, and left. Nobody dreamed that this neglected mummy would come to rewrite history. Almost a century after that, in 2007, Egypt's top archaeologist, Dr. Zihawas, reopened the tomb. His team, employing CT scans, DNA analysis, and forensic examination, reanalyzed the remains. The unidentified woman, the elderly, heavy-set one, arms crossed in royal fashion, still had not been identified until curators in the Cairo Museum found a tiny wooden box marked with Hatshepsut's royal cartouche. Within was a single tooth, immaculately preserved for more than 3 millennia. When scientists matched the tooth with the scans of the unidentified mummy's jaw, it was a perfect fit, a match. The unidentified woman from KV-60 was no other than Queen Hatshepsut herself. The news stunned the world. Egypt's lost queen had been discovered, not in a great royal tomb, but alongside the nurse who attended her as a child. But the greatest surprise came afterward, when researchers took DNA from her remains. What they learned would rewrite everything that historians believed they had known about Hatshepsut's life and her premature death. Rather than verify what they suspected, scientists discovered a secret tale of biology and tragedy. It is virtually impossible to extract ancient DNA. The mummification resins, oils, and salts that were used to preserve destroyed genetic matter over centuries. But with sophisticated PCR amplification and mitochondrial DNA testing, Dr. Angelique Corals and Dr. Yahya were able to recover bits of genetic code. They matched those sequences against other mummies of the royal family, such as Thutmose I and Amosa Nefertari, and the finding was unmistakable. The mummy from KV-60 was part of the maternal lineage of the 18th dynasty. The genetic markers coincided with Egypt's royal line. It was conclusive. The queen had at last spoken in her blood. CT scans uncovered even more. She was in her early 50s when she died, consistent with records of Hatshepsut's reign. But her body had a terrible tale to tell. Bone lesions, brittle composition, and fatty buildup meant severe obesity and late-stage diabetes. Most shocking of all, her skeleton bore the signs of metastatic bone cancer. For centuries, academics and scholars guessed she was poisoned or assassinated, but science uncovered something else. She was slowly dying from within. The origin of her agony was seen in an object once considered insignificant, a tiny alabaster vial still faintly scented after centuries. Chemical analysis detected the presence of benzopyrene, a tar-like substance now identified as a powerful cancer-causing agent. In ancient Egypt, resins combined with pitch and oils were found in balms and perfumes. Hatshepsut, committed to ritual cleanliness, probably used them daily. In seeking health and beauty, she may have inadvertently poisoned herself. Her DNA showed a genetic susceptibility to metabolic illness, leaving her even more open to the poisons in her cosmetics. The irony was heartbreaking. The queen who dominated her realm was brought down by the very practices designed to extend her divinity. The balm that had softened her flesh was eating away at her cells. The fragrance of immortality now was the kiss of death. Scientists reconstructed her last months. A former great queen debilitated by sickness, her flesh puffy and aching, her presence fading. It made sense of the abrupt fall of her powers, the silky ascension of Thutmose III, and the mystery of her death. She was not deposed. She felt the brutality of chemistry and the weakness of flesh. Following her death, the boy whom she had defended was the man who obliterated her. Thutmose III, maybe to reinstate patriarchal norms or protect his dynasty, erased her name from monuments systematically. But even in being erased, she stood tall. Her temple stood, and her tale breathed through desolation until science brought her back. The rediscovery of her mummy, the authentication of her DNA, and the identification of the carcinogenic bomb turned her from myth into woman, dazzling, imperfect, and deeply human. Hatshepsut's tale is no longer one of disappearance, but of rediscovery. Science returned to her the immortality her enemies attempted to usurp. Egyptologists now perceive her as no usurper, but as a visionary, Her choice to reign as a king was not a lie but a tactic. By taking on both male and female authority, she achieved a divine equilibrium that echoed Ma'at, the cosmic balance of opposites. Her reign reflected this equilibrium. In her temples, she appeared alternately as a graceful woman and a strong male pharaoh. Not contradiction, but completeness. Her architecture echoed this balance. Deir el-Bahari's terraces aligned with the rising sun, each level symbolizing unity between earth and sky, life and eternity. Through art, religion, and governance, she proved that power could transcend gender. Now, with the advances of modern science, we are able to finally view her as she really was. A progressive ruler, a woman beyond the constraints of her time. Her DNA completed the final page of her narrative, but also regained the initial one. It divulged the frailties that made her human and the virtues that made her divine. Inside her old cells is a chronicle of zeal and genius that re-engineered civilization. When scientists studied the microscopic fragments of her DNA, they found more than genes. They found testimony. A testimony that a woman could rule the mightiest empire with intellect instead of fear, through creation instead of conquest. Her reign lasted just over 2 decades, yet its influence still echoes across millennia. Her temple rises in Luxor, golden in the desert sun, whispering the postscript she inscribed in stone. Greatness is not of men or women, but those daring to dream beyond their era. The tale of Hatshepsut started in the stillness of a forgotten tomb and concluded amidst the whir of contemporary machines unraveling her DNA. It spans religion and science, myth and reality, death and rebirth. From CT scans and chemical residue, she was born again. The queen who disappeared into myth now lives again, in data, in discovery, and in memory. Ultimately, her DNA did what history was unable to. It spoke, and what it had to say was undeniable. Hatshepsut, daughter of Ammonius, king of Upper and Lower Egypt, was never meant to be forgotten. If the sands of Egypt had voices, they would tell her history not as tragedy, but as transformation. The woman who defied the gods was remade into one herself, not through divinity, but through defiance. The odd finding in her DNA was not about disease or death. It was about the price of immortality. The paradox that in order to be remembered forever, one must first lose themselves entirely. Her soul persists, written not in rock, but in the microscopic language of life itself. Perhaps that is Hatshepsut's greatest miracle. Not that she was a queen of Egypt, but that she remains a queen of our imagination, even thousands of years after her voice fell silent. When researchers first recovered DNA from a mummified remains thought to be those of Queen Hatshepsut, they anticipated verifying her lineage and revealing small secrets regarding her life and death. What they discovered instead was something that rocked the foundations of Egyptology. For decades, she had been hailed as a queen who became king, the woman who bucked tradition and ruled an empire equal to any man's. But her DNA revealed a much stranger tale. The investigation started in 2007 when Dr. Zahi Hawass and his team at the Egyptian Museum located her missing mummy, using a missing molar found in a box that was labeled with her name. That was the accepted fate for years. However, in 2023, new genomic sequencing showed deviations, genetic markers that did not match any existing Egyptian haplogroup. Rather, they mapped her ancestry thousands of years earlier, back to an unnamed population that predated Egypt's early dynasties. Initially, scientists blamed contamination, but multiple independent tests were repeated with the same findings. Hatshepsut's maternal lineage seemed linked to an ancient, unknown grouping discovered in eastern Sahara remains, older than Egyptian civilization itself. The implications were staggering. Did her lineage bear the inheritance of a lost people, maybe the semi-divine followers of horrors of myth? Some propose that her ancestry held the record of a pre-dynastic civilization. Even more remarkable were mutations in her mitochondrial DNA concerning melanin and bone mass, characteristics that could account for her unique, powerful appearance and the male representations in her statues. It may not have been symbolic. It may,